Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. We find Jack Ferguson driving to work. It's Saturday morning and he's driving to work. Who is Jack Ferguson? Well, you met him in a previous episode. This is Dr. Jack Ferguson. He's a family physician. He's trained in sports medicine, so he takes care of injured athletes. He attends the high school football games. But when he was in his training, he didn't think that was going to be enough for the career that he wanted to build. He was a very conscientious, hard-working medical student. So when he was trying to choose his specialty, he chose his lifestyle. He wanted to live in a smaller town, not a huge city. He wanted to live in a town. He wanted to take care of people, but he also wanted to be able to take care of very sick people, take care of very big medical problems. He looked at the family medicine training and he thought that it was fine for what it was intended for. But he wanted to be able to take care of dreadful, scary problems as well if they were to come up. So what Jack did is he applied to and was accepted into a combined residency, a dual residency, and he trained in family medicine, but he also trained in emergency medicine. So when he finished, he was dual trained. When he finished his qualification exams and received his board certification, he received that certification in family medicine and emergency medicine, so he is dual boarded. Well, not exactly, because he also did another year of extra training to get his sports medicine credentials, so this fellow is exquisitely well trained. He's been in this town for about 5 years. He was assigned the Saturday day shift in the emergency room at the hospital, and so he is going to show up promptly on time at 7 o'clock in the morning. When he arrived in the emergency room, he greeted the staff, and they were also changing. The new nurses that were coming on were Donna and Gordon. Donna is in her 30s. She's a mom. She's a scout leader, and she's a very well-trained nurse. Gordon is a big, heavily built guy with a trimmed beard, and he's a registered nurse as well. He is also a volunteer fireman. So these were the two nurses who he would be working with on this day shift in the emergency room. He was very happy to see them because he works very well with these two. Once the change of shift was finished, Dr. Ferguson greeted the two nurses he would be working with in the lounge area where they were drinking coffee, preparing for their day. He asked, "I wonder what is in store for us today?" Historically, Saturday morning in this emergency room is not very busy, but once people get moving and doing things, patients do come in. Sometimes when Jack comes to work on a Saturday morning, there is someone left over from the night before, somebody with a medical problem that had not quite been stabilized or resolved, and they were pending disposition. But today he arrived, there were no patients. So when he asked, "I wonder what's in store for us today," he didn't really expect an answer. It was a rhetorical question. That is, a question he threw out with no expectation that anyone answered. It's a rhetorical question. Well, Donna knew that, and she remained silent. But Gordon likes to talk. In fact, Gordon likes to talk so much that his colleagues, the other nurses, call him Chatty Cathy. Gordon? Cathy? How does that match? Well, Chatty Cathy is the name of a consumer product that was sold in the 60s in the United States, and it was back when dolls and toys didn't have embedded electronics and computer systems. And so Chatty Cathy was this product. It was a baby doll, and it had a string with a little loop, and you pull it and let go, and then this doll would talk. It had a few phrases that it would go through, and it would talk to the child, the owner of the doll. That was the technology of the day, and Chatty Cathy was part of popular culture. And so if somebody talks too much, they might be called a Chatty Cathy. And that was the fate that befell Gordon. And of course, the irony is pretty clear. Gordon's a big, bulky guy with a beard, and to call him Cathy was odd and funny. It was ironic. He wasn't offended by it. Gordon is not a fragile flower. So given Gordon's propensity to talk, in spite of the question not expecting an answer, Gordon said, well, maybe a code blue, CPR in progress. At that point, Jack hit his palm to the forehead because this was not what he wanted to hear. Code blue means somebody's heart stopped. They're not breathing. They're busy trying to die. And CPR in progress means that the ambulance crew is doing chest compressions and ventilating. They're trying to save his life. And these are nightmare cases. These are dreadful, tragic cases. Usually when a patient is transported by ambulance to this hospital, having been found with no pulse and no respirations, the chance of saving their life is very remote. But these are just tragedies, and this is not what Jack wanted to hear. And this is why Jack hit his own forehead with the palm of his hand, indicating to Gordon he was not receptive to that line. That pretty much put an end to that conversation. It was about the time that Dr. Ferguson sat down with a cup of coffee and his book that he was going to read when the doors opened and a mother brought her daughter in through the doors to be seen in the emergency room. They both looked very upset and they hurried to the registration desk. Gordon was quick to follow because he had this sense that something was the matter and he wanted to be helpful. What he saw was a towel covered in blood. And he saw that the color on the face of the young girl was not good. She looked ashen. She looked very pale. And Mom looked very upset. Gordon, using his years of experience, grabbed a wheelchair and slipped up behind the two of them, offering a seat to the young girl. He estimated that she was perhaps 12. He was correct. So she sat in the wheelchair, and he asked the mom if maybe he could take her to a room and let her lie down and make her more comfortable while Mom takes care of the registration. The mother agreed, so Gordon wheeled her quickly into one of the examination areas and helped her onto the gurney, that is the cart with wheels and a mattress, of course, with sheets, and it was pretty comfortable. He put the head of the gurney up so that she would be sitting up at an angle and would be comfortable. He also quickly checked some vital signs, blood pressure, pulse, respirations, and scratched them down on a piece of notepaper. You can see Gordon was already starting to work, taking care of this patient. Their only patient is getting full attention. While he was doing all this, he asked her what happened? She said that she was in her bedroom and she slipped on some clothes that were on the floor, and she fell forward and she put her hands out to break her fall. Unfortunately, her right hand hit the mirror and it shattered, and the broken mirror cut her hand. She said, there was blood everywhere and I felt terrible. He said, can you let me take a look at it? And she said, no, it hurts too much. I'm too scared. So she was not going to cooperate. And in fact, she burst into tears and was crying, sobbing. She was scared. Soon her mother was at her side. And shortly thereafter, Dr. Ferguson arrived to see if he could be of help. He asked if he could take a look at her cut. And again, she was really trying to not let anyone look at it and was sobbing. So Dr. Ferguson pulled up one of the stools on wheels and sat down next to her and started talking in a very calm voice. He asked her questions. What's her name? What does she like to do? And asked her if her hand really hurt very much. And she said, no, not really. And so over time, the conversation got quieter and quieter, and her crying stopped completely. Can I take a look? She said yes. And the two of them peeled the towel away from her hand, and he saw a big, deep cut on her hand. Oh, he's thinking to himself. Now, he didn't let on his concerns. He just noted mentally, that was a big cut on a small hand. It's definitely going to need some stitches. So he checked tendon function. Bleeding was at a minimum. He checked sensation, and he determined that none of the tendons had been lacerated. He determined that none of the important nerves had been cut, and that basically this was just a cut in the skin, albeit full thickness, that is all the way down to the fat under the skin, and pretty long, more than an inch long. He told the young girl that she was in luck because they have a very good way of taking care of this problem without causing pain or stress. He said, I'm going to need your help, but it's not difficult. You'll find it very easy. The nurses are watching Dr. Ferguson, wondering what sort of special technique he was going to deploy for this. They were used to injecting local anesthetic around the wound and sewing it up. They knew all about that, but he's talking about something special. Gordon had already set up a portable table with a set used for putting sutures in. He had already put the local anesthetic medication there, including the syringe and the needle. It was all there. But he didn't know what Dr. Ferguson was up to. So he said, should I know something about this special technique that we're going to use today? Dr. Ferguson said, absolutely. I need some 4% lidocaine and I need some sterile sponges. We're going to have her press that lidocaine into the cut herself, and that'll start the numbing process so that when we do what we do, it won't hurt her. At that point, Gordon looked at him a little askance, like, what? And Doc Ferguson looked at him and said, oh yes, you're right. The lidocaine will not absorb through the intact skin, but it will go in through the edge of the cut. It'll be just enough so that I won't hurt her when I infiltrate the lidocaine. Shortly, the 4% lidocaine solution had been applied to a sterile sponge, a sterile gauze, and Dr. Ferguson just handed it to the girl. And he said, I'd like you to push this into the cut. And the harder you push, the better it's going to work. This is numbing medicine. It won't hurt you, but just push it into the cut. And we're going to do this for about 5 minutes. And then you're going to lay down and we're going to take care of this. And we're not going to hurt you. Dr. Ferguson moved close to her and started talking to her in very calm, slow sentences. He explained that while they were sitting there, the medication was already going into the cut and putting the nerves to sleep so it won't hurt her. And he said, you know, you might start feeling a little sleepy too. And he continued with these statements suggesting that she's getting drowsy. He suggested that her eyes may feel heavy, and it's okay if they feel heavy. It's okay to close them. Your eyes are getting heavy, aren't they? At which point he could tell because they were starting to flutter. They were almost blinking, and she was having trouble holding them open. He continued his calm, relentless suggestions until he finally said, you can close your eyes. Everything's going to be fine. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. We're going to take care of you. You don't have anything to worry about. And he just kept with these suggestions. Gordon and Donna were watching this unfold. They had never seen this done in the emergency room. Pretty soon, Dr. Ferguson said, okay, now you can put your hand down. The medicine's done its job. You are totally relaxed. You're very sleepy. We're not going to hurt you. Extend your arm out here. And he put her arm out into the position so that he can work on it. When it became clear that he had attained the response he needed, he quickly used the syringe to inject small amounts of local anesthetic from the inside edge of the cut, around the cut, numbing all the skin around the cut. He then used very fine suture and lined the two edges of the cut up correctly and put a series of simple sutures, tying each one with a knot and cutting it with scissors. He was very quick, and the cut was completely closed, and he stood and realized that his patient was still under hypnosis. So he started talking to her again, and he said, okay, we're all done. I'm going to count to 3, and on 3, you will open your eyes. You will feel wonderful. You won't remember any of the scary parts of this procedure, and you are going to think this was just a very pleasant visit to our emergency room. He said, on 3, you'll open your eyes. 1, 2, 3. And the girl's eyes opened. She looked at him and smiled. She looked at her cut and smiled at that. Dr. Ferguson went out to the waiting room to talk to the mother and asked Gordon if he could put a dressing on. Well, of course he could, and he would. Dr. Ferguson spoke with our patient's mom, gave her the instructions on how to care for this, and told her the staff would arrange the follow-up appointment for the suture removal in about 10 days. He was walking to his little office to start reading the book he had brought when he overheard Donna talking to Gordon about what they had just seen. Donna said, Dr. Ferguson just amazes me. He is such a good doctor. I didn't know he could do that. Gordon said, yep. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite you to leave comments below, and I hope you join us in future videos. We'll see you soon.